Imagine abandoning everything you know to follow an uncertain path in a foreign land. What would make you take such a radical decision? Today, we'll uncover the incredible story of Ruth, a woman who faced loss, poverty, and prejudice, but through her courage and faith, found a new life and a special place in Israel's history. How did this foreigner end up becoming a key figure in the lineage of one of Israel's greatest kings? Stay with us and dive into this emotional journey of loyalty, love, and redemption. In the land of Moab, Naomi was left devastated. Her husband, Elimelech, had died, leaving her with their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. They had come to Moab to escape a famine in Bethlehem, and now Naomi was a widow in a foreign land. Her sons married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth, but after about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, leaving Naomi bereft of her husband and her sons. In her grief, Naomi decided to return to Bethlehem. She heard that the Lord had provided food for his people, and she prepared to leave Moab. Naomi urged her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab, return to their mother's homes, and remarry. Orpah reluctantly agreed and said goodbye, but Ruth clung to Naomi. With a heart full of determination and love, Ruth made a profound declaration. "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." Seeing Ruth's resolve, Naomi stopped urging her to leave. Together, they embarked on the journey back to Bethlehem, 2 widows seeking a new beginning amid the uncertainty of what lay ahead. When Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem, the town was abuzz with their return. The women of the town exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" But Naomi, feeling the weight of her loss, replied, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." Despite Naomi's bitterness, Ruth remained steadfast. Determined to provide for them, she asked Naomi for permission to go into the fields and glean leftover grain behind the harvesters. Naomi agreed, and Ruth set out to find a field where she might work. Providentially, Ruth found herself in the field of Boaz, a relative of Elimelech. Boaz, a man of standing and honor, noticed the diligent young woman working in his field. He asked his foreman about her and learned of her loyalty to Naomi and her hard work. Boaz approached Ruth and said, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." Ruth bowed down, expressing her gratitude and surprise at his kindness. Boaz reassured her, acknowledging her sacrifices and praying that the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings she had come to take refuge, would reward her fully. Ruth continued working in Boaz's field, finding favor and protection. Naomi, upon hearing of Boaz's kindness, saw a glimmer of hope in their situation. The harvest continued, and with it, the promise of better days ahead for Ruth and Naomi. When Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem, the town was buzzing with excitement. It was the beginning of the barley harvest, a time of renewal and hope for everyone. However, for Naomi and Ruth, the future still seemed uncertain. They had little to sustain themselves and needed to find a way to survive. Ruth, always willing and brave, took the initiative. She told Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi agreed, and Ruth went to the fields, where she began to gather the leftover grain. By chance, or perhaps by God's providence, Ruth ended up in the field of Boaz, a relative of Elimelech, Naomi's late husband. Boaz was a respected and influential man in Bethlehem. Upon arriving at the field, he noticed the diligent young woman working hard. Intrigued, he asked his foreman, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The foreman explained that she was Ruth, the Moabite who had returned with Naomi from Moab. He also told Boaz how Ruth had asked for permission to gather grain and how she had been working tirelessly since morning, with only a short rest. Impressed by Ruth's dedication and story, Boaz decided to act kindly. Boaz approached Ruth and said, "Listen, my daughter, don't go and glean in another field and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." Ruth, surprised and grateful, bowed down and asked, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Boaz's kindness was a balm to Ruth's weary soul. She continued to work in the fields, always finding favor and provision. Naomi, upon hearing about Boaz and his generosity, began to see a light of hope in the darkness. The harvest continued, and with it, the promise of better days ahead for Ruth and Naomi grew stronger, setting the stage for an outcome that only God could orchestrate. Ruth continued to work in Boaz's fields day after day, gleaning with dedication and perseverance. Her presence and hard work did not go unnoticed. Boaz, observing her, instructed his workers to leave some extra stalks of grain for Ruth to gather. He wanted to ensure that she and Naomi were well provided for. Ruth worked tirelessly from dawn until dusk, and at the end of each day, she returned home with a good amount of barley. Naomi, seeing the generosity of the harvests, asked Ruth where she had worked. When Ruth mentioned Boaz's name, Naomi's face lit up. She exclaimed, "The Lord bless him. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." Naomi explained to Ruth that Boaz was a close relative, one of their kinsman redeemers. Ruth continued to glean in Boaz's fields until the end of the barley and wheat harvests. During this time, Boaz ensured that Ruth was protected and well treated. He provided her with water, food, and clear instructions to his workers to not harm her. Boaz's kindness, combined with Ruth's hard work, ensured that both women had enough to live on. As Ruth worked, Naomi began to devise a plan. Knowing the law of the kinsman redeemer and recognizing Boaz's kindness, she saw an opportunity to secure Ruth's future. Naomi's wisdom and experience led her to guide Ruth on the next steps to take. Each day, Ruth harvested not only the grains from the fields but also seeds of hope and divine provision. Her loyalty to Naomi and unwavering faith were about to be rewarded in an extraordinary way, as God's hand continued to guide them through the circumstances, revealing a greater plan. With the barley harvest concluded, Naomi knew the time was ripe to act according to the traditions of their people. She called Ruth and said, "My daughter, I must find a home for you, where you will be well provided for. Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." Ruth did everything Naomi instructed her. She went to the threshing floor and waited until Boaz had finished eating and drinking and had lain down. Quietly, she approached, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled Boaz. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." Ruth's request was direct but laden with meaning. Asking Boaz to spread his garment over her was a request for protection and marriage, according to the Redeemer tradition. Boaz, moved by Ruth's loyalty and courage, responded, "The Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good. Let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. Ruth lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. Boaz gave her 6 measures of barley and sent her back to Naomi with the message, "Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." When Ruth returned, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Ruth told her everything Boaz had done for her and gave her the barley. Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Boaz's response to Ruth's request was a mix of immediate kindness and thoughtful action. His commitment to do what was right by the laws and traditions showed his integrity and set the stage for the resolution of their story. Boaz, now committed to redeeming Ruth and Elimelech's inheritance, not only fulfilled his promise but did so with integrity that reflected his justice and generosity. After the transaction was made official in the presence of elders and witnesses, Boaz took Ruth into his home, and she became his wife. The community of Bethlehem, seeing the unfolding of this story, rejoiced in their union and acknowledged Boaz's kindness and Ruth's virtue. Boaz didn't just fulfill the legal obligations. He treated Ruth with love and respect, valuing her not just as a wife, but as a woman of great faith and courage. His generosity went beyond the legal transaction. He cared for Naomi, ensuring she too was provided for and cared for in her old age. The marriage of Boaz and Ruth brought new blessings to the family. Soon, Ruth conceived and gave birth to a son. The women of the town celebrated with Naomi, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Naomi, who once said her name should be Mara, meaning bitterness, now held a new hope in her arms, a grandson who would be part of King David's lineage. The neighbors named the baby Obed, who became the father of Jesse, the father of David. Boaz demonstrated that justice and generosity go hand in hand. He not only fulfilled his duties, but did so with a heart full of compassion and love, reflecting God's character. The story of Boaz and Ruth became a living testimony that kindness, loyalty, and faith are rewarded in ways beyond our imagination. The marriage of Ruth and Boaz was celebrated with great joy in Bethlehem. This was not just a family event, but an occasion that brought the community together in a moment of celebration and hope. Everyone recognized the significance of this union, not only because of the story of loyalty and love, but also because it fulfilled the laws and traditions of Israel. Boaz, a respected and honorable man, took Ruth as his wife with a heart full of love and generosity. Ruth, in turn, found in Boaz a protector and partner who recognized her virtue and faith. Their union was not just about survival, but a celebration of a new beginning and future blessings. Ruth's life changed completely. From a foreigner, widow, and destitute, she became a beloved and respected wife. Boaz ensured she was honored in her new position and welcomed Naomi into their home, caring for her to ensure she too felt secure and provided for. The blessings of their union soon manifested. Ruth conceived and gave birth to a son, bringing immense joy to Boaz, Naomi, and the entire community. The birth of Obed was seen as a clear sign of God's faithfulness in rewarding loyalty and faith. The women of the town, filled with joy, said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel." Naomi, who had returned to Bethlehem bitter and desolate, now held a grandson, a sign of renewal and hope. Obed brought joy and renewed purpose to her life. She, who had lost everything, now had a grandson who would ensure the continuity of her family and a prosperous future. The community of Bethlehem recognized God's hand in this entire story. The union of Ruth and Boaz was more than a marriage. It was the culmination of a series of events that demonstrated divine faithfulness, provision, and grace. Boaz, with his justice and generosity, and Ruth, with her loyalty and courage, became living examples of what it means to live according to God's will. This blessed and celebrated marriage not only brought personal happiness but also established a lasting legacy. Obed, the son of Ruth and Boaz, would become the grandfather of David, the most beloved king of Israel, and thus, this union became a vital part of the lineage leading to the birth of the Messiah. Ruth and Boaz, united by love and divine providence, show us that even in the most challenging situations, faith, loyalty, and justice can transform lives and leave a lasting impact for future generations. The birth of Obed marked a moment of profound joy and renewal for Ruth, Boaz, and Naomi. This baby, born of a union that symbolized divine kindness and providence, brought new hope and a sense of completeness to everyone around him. Obed was welcomed with celebrations and blessings in Bethlehem. The entire town seemed to rejoice at the arrival of this boy, who represented continuity and prosperity. For Naomi, who had returned to her homeland with a heavy heart full of sorrow and loss, the birth of Obed was a radical transformation. She had gone from bitterness and loneliness to the joy and satisfaction of holding a grandson who brought new promises. The boy was quickly surrounded by love and care. The women of the town, who had followed Ruth and Naomi's journey from the beginning, expressed their joy by saying, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Obed, which means servant or worshiper in Hebrew, represented much more than just a new family member. He was a symbol of a new beginning and the redemption God had brought to Ruth and Naomi's lives. Through Obed, the promise of a prosperous future and the continuity of the family lineage were assured. Boaz and Ruth, now parents, experienced deep satisfaction and joy in watching their son grow. Obed was not just their son, but the beginning of a new generation. He would become the father of Jesse, and Jesse would be the father of King David, one of the greatest kings of Israel and a direct ancestor of Jesus Christ. The impact of Obed's birth was felt not just in the immediate family context but throughout the history of Israel. David's lineage, which began with Ruth and Boaz, played a crucial role in the history of salvation, culminating in the birth of Jesus. Obed's birth symbolized redemption not only for a family but for an entire nation. It was a powerful reminder that even in the midst of adversity and challenges, divine providence can transform lives and bring new hope. Ruth and Boaz's legacy, through their son Obed, continued to influence the history of Israel and humanity for future generations, showing that faithfulness and love are never in vain. Ruth, a Moabite woman who began her journey in a foreign land and faced many adversities, became one of the most notable characters in Israel's history. Her transformation from a destitute foreigner to an ancestor of King David is a powerful testament to divine grace and providence. Ruth's story begins with a courageous and challenging decision. By committing to follow her mother-in-law Naomi and embrace the God of Israel, she demonstrated a faith and loyalty that transcended cultural and social barriers. Her life, marked by hard work and dignity, caught the attention of Boaz, who recognized her virtues and took her as his wife. Ruth's impact was more than personal. It was profoundly historical. The birth of her son, Obed, not only brought joy and renewal to her family, but also established the lineage that would lead to King David. Ruth's story is intertwined with David's and, by extension, with Jesus Christ. Ruth is mentioned in Jesus' genealogy found in the Gospel of Matthew, where her name appears alongside other great figures in Israel's history. She is a living example of how God uses those often seen as outsiders to fulfill his purposes. Her inclusion in Jesus' genealogy demonstrates that God's redemption and grace are for everyone, regardless of origin or past. Ruth's journey is an inspiring reminder that, no matter where we start or the difficulties we face, faith and courage can lead us to great achievements. She became a symbol of hope and redemption, showing that God can transform the lives of those who put their trust and loyalty in him. Ruth's legacy, through her contribution to the royal lineage of Israel and her role in the story of salvation, continues to inspire and remind everyone that divine grace can overcome all barriers and bring transformation. Her story, from a foreigner to an ancestor of King David, is a testament to God's power to make all things new and to use every life, no matter how unlikely it may seem, to fulfill his wonderful plans. Ruth's story, from her humble beginnings in Moab to becoming a pivotal figure in Israel's history, stands as a profound testament to divine providence and faith. Her journey illustrates how God's hand can guide and transform lives in the most extraordinary ways, turning sorrow into joy and despair into hope. Ruth's unwavering loyalty to Naomi, her courage in the face of uncertainty, and her steadfast faith in the God of Israel brought her from the margins to the heart of God's redemptive plan. Her marriage to Boaz not only secured her future but also wove her into the very fabric of Israel's history, making her a direct ancestor of King David and, ultimately, Jesus Christ. The story of Ruth teaches us about the power of kindness, the importance of loyalty, and the blessings that come from faith. Ruth's life was marked by decisions that required immense bravery and trust in God's provision. Her actions showed that even in the most challenging circumstances, faithfulness and integrity can lead to remarkable outcomes. Ruth's legacy is one of hope and redemption. It reminds us that God's grace is inclusive, reaching out to all, regardless of their background or past. Her life is a testament to the fact that God can use anyone to fulfill his divine purposes and that every step of faith, no matter how small, contributes to his grand design. As we reflect on Ruth's story, we are encouraged to trust in God's providence, to be faithful in our relationships, and to act with integrity and kindness. Ruth's journey from a foreigner to a key figure in the lineage of Christ underscores the transformative power of divine grace and the boundless possibilities that lie ahead when we walk in faith.